All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking David Goggins' phenomenal blueprint for mental toughness, digging into the raw, unflinching tools required to completely rewrite your reality. We're looking at the core philosophies from his absolutely groundbreaking book, Can't Hurt Me, Master Your Mind and Defy the Odds. Now, if you've ever felt like you're just hitting a wall, or maybe like your circumstances are entirely dictating your potential, well, this is going to fundamentally change the way you view your own capabilities. Goggins isn't just throwing out empty theory here. He's offering a tested, frankly grueling methodology for self-mastery, discipline, and absolute self-accountability. I want to start off by asking you a question. It's one that challenges the very core of human potential and grabs right at that universal feeling we all have of hitting our absolute limits. What if the limits you feel are mostly created by your own mind? What if I told you that most people stop far, far before reaching their true potential? We all have this internal governor, right? It's a protective mechanism that desperately tells us to stop the second things get uncomfortable. But the central premise we're exploring today is that this governor is literally lying to you. The barriers you feel, they aren't physical. They are profoundly psychological.
Okay, moving into section 1, defying the odds. The starting point does not define the destination. To really understand how to defy those limits, we have to understand where this entire philosophy was forged. It wasn't born in some sterile laboratory. It was born in the crucible of real, agonizing hardship. Goggins didn't just wake up one day as an elite athlete. He grew up in a devastatingly difficult environment, characterized by intense poverty, fear, and severe abuse. And later in life, he found himself entirely lacking direction, struggling with his identity, weighing nearly 300 pounds, and just drowning in self-doubt. That was his starting line. But through the exact tools we're about to discuss, he completely transformed himself into an elite Navy SEAL, a world-class ultramarathon runner, and a legendary endurance athlete. This massive transformation is the ultimate proof that your past has absolutely zero authority over your future.
Section 2, the brutal truth. It is time to stop hiding from weaknesses. To make that leap from utter self-doubt to absolute mastery, you have to build a foundation of reality. And that brings us to the first agonizing, but completely necessary step: brutal self-honesty. You literally cannot fix what you refuse to acknowledge. Denial is the ultimate comfort zone. Man, let that sink in for a second. Stepping out of denial is the only way to stop running from reality and actually start improving it. We're constantly in danger of living lives so comfortable, so soft, that we risk dying without ever realizing our true potential. Denial protects our ego, right? It tells us that our lack of progress is someone else's fault, or that we're doing enough when we absolutely aren't. To break this cycle, you just have to stop running. So the crucial point here is applying what's called the accountability mirror. It's a literal process of using sticky notes on your mirror to face your flaws and hold yourself utterly responsible. First, you accept reality exactly as it is, no sugarcoating. Second, you identify your weaknesses. Look, if you're out of shape, admit it. If you're undisciplined, look yourself right in the eyes and say it out loud. Third, track your goals. Goggins would write his insecurities and his goals on sticky notes and stick them right on his mirror. Every single morning, he had to look at himself and confront his own excuses. It's a daily practice of absolute accountability. Those large, impossible-seeming goals, they only become possible when you break them down and face yourself honestly every single day. Section 3, forging mental armor, equipping psychological weapons. Once you finally stop lying to yourself, you need to know how to keep going when things get incredibly hard. Because when you embark on this journey, motivation will eventually fade, for sure. You need actual psychological tools to deploy when your mind is begging you to quit. Confidence isn't magic. It's built from the hard, undeniable evidence of your own past successes when you took on seemingly impossible tasks. We call this concept the cookie jar. It's about storing memories of your past victories and, more importantly, the specific difficult situations you've managed to survive and overcome. When you're right in the middle of a grueling task and you just want to give up, you mentally reach into that cookie jar. You remind yourself of what you've survived before. You use your own history as fuel. It proves to your panicking brain that you have what it takes because, hey, you've done hard things before. Now, when you start outworking everyone around you, what Goggins calls taking souls, you really begin to win the mental game. Greatness pulls mediocrity into the mud. This concept is incredibly profound. It speaks to shifting the energy in the room. When you're suffering alongside others or you're facing a fierce competitor and you choose to push harder instead of backing down, you completely change the dynamic. You show the world and yourself a level of endurance that literally forces mediocrity to confront itself. The stark takeaway here is that your sheer effort itself becomes a weapon.
It's a weapon against your opponents, yes, but mostly against your own self-doubt. Outworking expectations creates a massive psychological advantage. When you go above and beyond, you don't just gain a physical edge, you gain a mental one. You realize that your effort is the one thing you completely control. Even if you aren't the smartest or the most naturally talented person in the room, you can always choose to be the hardest worker. And honestly, that realization is incredibly empowering. To callous the mind, you have to realize that growth begins exactly where comfort ends. Deliberately facing discomfort is what builds unbreakable mental calluses. Think about it, just like your hands build physical calluses when you lift heavy weights to protect against the friction, your mind builds psychological calluses when you repeatedly expose it to friction. You have to face discomfort deliberately. You take on repeated challenges. That is exactly how you build resilience. You can't read your way to mental toughness. You actually have to seek out discomfort and endure it. Section 4. The 40% rule. Exhaustion is just a trick of the mind. Now we've reached the absolute climax of Goggins' philosophy. We're tackling that internal governor that so desperately wants you to quit. We are going to explore a concept that will completely redefine your understanding of exhaustion. We all hit that wall where the mind screams to stop, right? But the shocking truth is that feeling exhausted absolutely does not mean you are finished. Most of us are only using a fraction of our capabilities. When you're running or working or studying and your brain sends a massive distress signal saying, "I'm done, I have nothing left to give," that is a biological trick. It's just your brain trying to protect you from pain. It's deeply conservative. When your brain tells you you're entirely tapped out, you actually still have a massive reserve of untapped potential waiting to be accessed. When you hit that wall of total exhaustion, you are generally only at about 40% of your actual maximum capacity. Let me repeat that. That means a staggering 60% of your potential is still sitting there, completely untouched, locked behind a mental barrier. The trick is learning to carefully test those boundaries and push past that initial signal of exhaustion. When you do, you realize the pain doesn't necessarily get worse. Your tolerance simply expands. Section 5. Discipline over motivation. Growth never ends. Removing those mental barriers isn't just some one-time event. It leads us to the reality that lifelong growth requires a fundamental shift in how we operate day to day. You cannot rely on hype to carry you through that remaining 60% of your potential. You must be more than motivated. You have to become driven. Motivation is fleeting, it's fickle. But discipline? Discipline is the permanent engine that keeps you moving forward even when you are completely uninspired. Motivation comes and goes based on how you slept, what you ate, or a cool video you just watched. It's just an emotion. But discipline is an action. Consistency is the whole game. When you're driven, you do the work whether you feel like it or not, because discipline lasts far longer than motivation ever could. So the absolutely crucial point to take away from this entire explainer is that your main adversary isn't the world, it isn't your circumstances or other people, it's your own internal voice. The biggest opponent is the voice that says you cannot continue. All the obstacles we've talked about today, the poverty, the weight, the grueling physical challenges, none of them are as formidable as the voice inside your own head trying to negotiate a way out of the work. Mastering your mind means learning to silence that voice, or at the very least, learning to entirely ignore it. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. You have the blueprint now. So what are you going to do with the 60% you've been leaving on the table? You are capable of so much more than you think. We've seen how the accountability mirror forces honesty, how the cookie jar provides undeniable evidence, how deliberate discomfort calluses the mind, and how the 40% rule reveals your massive hidden reserves. The tools are literally right in front of you. The only question now is whether you're willing to face the brutal truth, embrace the discomfort, and finally master your mind to defy the odds.